Confession Time by Stella Whitelaw, read by June Whitfield.
Janet sat stiffly on the edge of the hard plastic chair, nervously twisting her handkerchief. She'd never been in a police interview room before. "It was me," she said in a low voice. "I killed that old man. He didn't deserve to live any longer." "Oh, yeah?" Detective Inspector Cruz looked at her suspiciously. She was a small woman, neatly dressed in a grey skirt and jumper, a patterned scarf at her neck. "How did you kill him?" "He was an unpleasant old man, always trying to talk to young girls. I didn't like him. He never washed." "He lived alone," said Detective Inspector Cruz. "He did his best." "As I said, he got on my nerves, so I killed him." "How, Mrs. Price?" "I strangled him," said Janet. "It didn't take me long. He was frail." "Take her away," he sighed to the WPC. "A waste of time. I've got better things to do than listen to your fantasies, Mrs. Price." "But aren't you going to arrest me?" she said anxiously. "No, I'm not. That old man was stabbed to death, and the house ransacked. Now take yourself home and don't bother me again." He slammed out of the room. "You ought to see a doctor," said the policewoman kindly. "It might help to talk to someone." "I did kill him," Janet protested. Out in the street, she felt the afternoon sunshine on her face. She had a lot to do before she went home: shopping, library and the dry cleaners. She'd better hurry in case for once her husband came home early. It was nearly a month before she returned to the police station and walked up to the desk. "May I speak to someone?" she said to the sergeant. "It's about that murder of a woman found in Wentworth Road yesterday. I did it." "One moment, madam," said the sergeant, reaching for the telephone. He rang through to CID. Detective Inspector Cruz nearly spilt his black coffee. "Oh, Lord, it's that woman again. She's come to confess to another murder. This time I'm going to tell her straight." Janet waited in the same bare interview room, patting her hair tidy. The detective burst in and shuffled papers in a bulky file to look busy. "Now, Mrs. Price, I haven't much time. What do you want to tell me?" "It's about that young woman killed in Wentworth Road. It was in the papers this morning. I killed her. I did, really," Janet said timidly. "Why?" "She was up to no good, wandering about at that time of night. She deserved all she got." "How did you kill her?" "I stabbed her." "How was she dressed?" "Oh, well, it was dark and a very short skirt and boots, I think." "As it happens, she was a nurse coming off night duty. She was hit on the head with a blunt instrument and she was wearing trousers. I am going to suggest you see a psychiatrist. I ought to charge you with wasting police time, but I am going to be lenient." "Yes, it was a blunt instrument," Janet went on, as they made an appointment for her at a psychiatric hospital. I remember, a short, blunt instrument." "Make that woman stay out of my sight," the detective growled as Janet left, "and that's an order." She had been keeping the appointments with the psychiatrist. They had chatted together about her lonely childhood. It was a treat to spend time talking to someone about herself. Her husband was not interested at all. He hardly noticed her. When they found the body of Fiona Turner floating face down in the canal, the police expected Janet to turn up on their doorstep. "Hello, Mrs. Price," said the desk sergeant, recognising her a few days later. "Come to confess?" "It's important I speak with someone," she said, twisting her gloves. 5 minutes later, the detective marched into the room. "This has got to stop, Mrs. Price," he warned. "I don't want to hear any more cock and bull stories." "But I did murder her," said Janet sharply. "I did. You've got to believe me. I met her at the supermarket. I'd seen her there before. I offered her a lift because it was raining. When we got near the canal, I hit her on the head and pushed her in. Then I drove home." "Why did you do this?" said the detective, looking at his watch. "Because she was a fool. She was up to something. She deserved it." "Right on 2 counts this time, Mrs. Price. Miss Turner was hit on the head and did drown after being left unconscious in the water. Both facts were reported in the newspapers, but how did you get her along the path and into the canal? She was a robust woman, at least 11 stone. You're small and slim, so how?" "On a supermarket trolley," said Janet triumphantly. "I laid her over the trolley and wheeled her there." "And why did you cut off all her hair before you pushed her into the canal?" the detective asked her. "Because that's what they did to traitors in the war. Cut off their hair, and then I threw it in the water." "Mrs. Price," said the detective wearily, "Miss Turner was found with a full head of red hair. Go home and leave me alone." "Very well," said Janet meekly. "You've been very kind." "Are you still keeping your appointments at the hospital?" he asked, regretting his anger. "Oh, yes. They're kind to me too." She went out into the street and walked towards her parked car. She must return the shopping trolley, still hidden in the boot, and give the upholstery another clean. The tyre lever was at the bottom of the canal a mile downstream. The weapon could never be traced to her. She had a lot to do before her husband came home. He'd be back early with no curvaceous redhead to keep him late at the office. Janet tore up the photograph she'd found of him and Fiona Turner looking lovingly into each other's eyes. She made a small funeral pyre of the pieces and set fire to them, smiling to herself. Confession was good for the soul.